Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel. Do some more slug testing, and today we've got another new round that we haven't tried on the channel, and I'm definitely curious to see how it performs through my setup, since this particular brand of shells has been pretty hit or miss in my testing with them. Some versions of their slugs do pretty decent, others are a little disappointing, so I'm definitely curious to see what this particular version of them can actually do. But as for those slugs we've got out here today, I brought out some of these, the Hornady American Whitetail Sabot slugs. These ones are their 12 gauge, 2 3/4 inch, 325 grain interlock Sabot slugs, moving at about 1,825 feet per second. And Hornady slugs in general, like I mentioned a second ago, have been pretty on or off when it comes to my setup. We've seen one or two pretty solid performances, but we've also seen another one or two that were pretty mediocre or a little disappointing. So we'll see what these American Whitetail Sabot slugs with the interlock projectile can actually give us, and if they actually perform well out of my particular shotgun. And here's what one of those shells looks like out of the box. Very standard Hornady type of stuff here, but you can see that interlock projectile down in there. Nice hollow point bullet, copper jacket, lead core type of deal. Very classic stuff, but is it actually going to perform accurately through my shotgun? We'll see what we can get. And as for that shotgun we've got today, I brought out my Remington 870 special purpose. This one has an 18.5-inch fully rifled cantilever barrel, and up on top is a loopholed VX1 2-7x28. We've seen some really nice performances from it before, so I guess we'll see what the American Whitetails can actually give us through it today. But as for today's test, everything is set up the same as we would normally do it for these. I don't have a ton of these slugs, so we have to make do with what I do have. So we'll shoot a 3-shot group at 50 yards and then another 3-shot group at 100 yards. It's definitely not a perfect test, but it will at least give us an idea of if this is a decent performing combination or not. And of course, all of our shots will be through the chronograph as well, so we can get our velocity from those shells out of this quite a bit shorter of a barrel. I don't expect to see box claim, but we'll be able to see what we are actually getting. So let's get you guys a view of that 50-yard target and start shooting our 50 and 100-yard groups, and we'll see what these American Whitetail interlock Sabot slugs can give us for today. I don't know what we're going to see, but let's go try it and see what kind of accuracy we can get out of them. Alright, so we'll peek at our chronograph here real quick before we look at our target, and I gotta say, I don't know that I ever got an actual reading from these shells. This 1986 that you see right here from the last shot that we took is as close as we got to the 1875 claim, and we're still over that box velocity out of our much shorter barrels, so I don't know that that number is correct, but I can tell you those 2500 and 4000 numbers and stuff were definitely wrong. I tried moving the chronograph closer or a little farther away, and our lighting is perfect out here today, so they just didn't want to read quite right, which is a little bit of a tricky thing sometimes with Sabot slugs through a chronograph. But if that 1986 number is correct, here is your energy numbers for this 325 grain interlock at that velocity. I don't know that that number is correct, but at least there is a number for you as kind of a reference. But now let's go over to our target and take a peek at what we got there, because things definitely got pretty interesting. Alright, so now let's take a peek at our targets and see what kind of accuracy we got. This thing's definitely got a little strange here. We'll start over there on the left with our 50-yard group, which I had to take 4 shots on because we had 1 or 2 up here on the paper nice, and then we threw this guy way down here in the bottom left, and that is clearly a keyhole bullet all day long. So something went sideways with that particular shot, which I think I know the answer, and I'll show you guys what I mean here in a second. But I think these slugs definitely have a little bit of a design flaw or something in them because they are not very consistent. So we will throw this one out for now as far as our measurements go, but I'll go ahead and measure these 3, which are straight and actually stabilized properly, and give you the number there. All right, so 50 yards, we had 2.69 inches for these 3 holes up here, a little over 2.5 inches. I mean, it's plenty usable enough on a whitetail at 50 yards, but it's not ideal and generally not what I'm looking looking to see. At 50 yards, I pretty much expect that gun to be just about touching as far as our bullet holes go. So far from the best we've seen, but it would still work at 50 yards. So now let's move over to our 100-yard target on the right. And I felt good about all of these trigger pulls today. So the groups we see, I think, are the legitimate groups. And we had these 3 bullet holes right here in a line. Definitely not the most consistent looking thing, that's for sure. But we pretty much got the same line at 50 yards. At least all of these holes are still stable and flying straight. So let's measure that 100-yard group and see there, because it's definitely not very impressive. All right, so at 100 yards, we had 6.03 inches. Definitely not great. Technically speaking, would it be good enough? Sure, it's minute of deer at 100, but I like to see my slug guns at least 3 inches or better personally. And we know that 870 is more than capable of that, but I think these rounds have a little bit of a flaw with them. So let's swing around and take a look at our actual shells and our sabots, and I'll show you guys what my concerns are here. So first up, here are some of the sabots out of those shells, and they all look very much normal for a Hornady loading. These black hard plastic sabots, we've got good rifle engagement down at the base there. So these 3 look perfectly fine, and they all pretty much look the exact same except for one. And here is that one, and you can see a big old hole down in the base of it and a whole missing pedal here. So kind of looking at it here, that sure looks like a bullet may have been pressed out of the back of the sabot when it took off down the barrel. And I think some of our shells might tell the story here as to what we saw, because I have a sneaking suspicion that this is the culprit for that sideways keyhole bullet hole that we saw at 50 yards there. So here's one of those shells up close. Everything looks normal, but what I have noticed is a couple of these shells throughout the couple boxes I have, the bullet in them is loose and rattles around. Can't really tell when I move it here with my finger because my finger blocks it, but I'll hold this up to the microphone and shake it, and you guys should be able to hear this bullet rattling around inside this sabot. So yeah, that bullet is not very secured in there, and it would not surprise me if when these are fired, that bullet gets jammed into the back of the sabot, and we saw one that must have been loose enough where that bullet might have actually been jammed all the way through the back of the sabot and kicked it sideways. That right there may very well be our accuracy that we saw. If we had a sabot that was maybe a little stiffer, a little tighter, a bullet that was a little bit larger diameter or something, that might actually help fix our accuracy here. But that rattle and that other sabot we just saw, I think tells the story here most likely, from what I'm guessing. All right, y'all. Well, what did you think about those results right there? Definitely pretty interesting. They do show signs of potential. I mean, that's not the worst we've seen as far as accuracy goes. We've seen way worse than that. But I just think there's a little bit of a flaw here. Now, is that just from the batch of shells that I bought? I don't know. But considering that the same thing is in 2 boxes, tells me that they might have had a little bit of a problem here with these. Now, is it a straight up design flaw or just this run of them? I don't know, but I would hazard a guess that the keyhole bullet hole that we saw at 50 yards was from that sabot that looks like a bullet tried to sneak out the back of it. And that kind of weird stuff can definitely lead to this kind of subpar accuracy. So I guess leave all your thoughts in the comments. Is that about what you expected to see, or were you surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of the American Whitetail Sabot slugs? And if so, what kind of results have you seen? And what do you think happened here today? Do you think that I'm kind of on the right track here with my guess, or is there something else that I'm missing here? Because clearly we've got enough barrel length to stabilize these just fine. That's definitely not a problem. I just think those loose slugs in those sabots are throwing our groups off a little bit and giving us some inconsistencies. So let me know all your thoughts down below. So with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description down below if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it. So I'll see you all in the next one.